Ba-ba-do-bop. Da-ba-do-bop-bop-ba-doo-doo-doo-boo-boo. Doo-ba-doo-bop-bop-ba-ba-ba. Hey, everybody. How you doing? Welcome again to another edition of Smirky Inside. Hope you're all doing well. It's a little bit rainy out here today, but we're making do. Um, and Yeah, hopefully you can come on and join us and drop some of your comments in the side here. We always love to hear from you. And if you've got questions as we go, be sure to go ahead and ask those on the fly, and I should be able to see them as we progress. But yeah, today I'm going to start with just a couple quick updates, and then I'm going to actually get to the meat of the show, which is, I don't think I've ever seen a video about how intro videos to Kickstarters and things like that are actually produced for board games. And I thought, hey, I'm writing one of those right now. Why not actually show the process to everyone? Maybe it'd be interesting. So let's see, who do we have? Oh, Tanner's out there. Hey there. Colin's out there. Thanks for joining us, everyone. George is out there too. George, by the way, makes a lot of these trailers. So good to see you stopping by. Brad, hey, how are you? So a couple just quick updates. A lot of people still been very anxious to hear, what's happening with the Night Cage. Where is it on the ocean? Well, we have it on decent authority that the boat that has all the Kickstarter games has essentially reached port out on the West Coast, but we have not gotten confirmation that it's actually unloaded yet, and made dock and then unloaded. So it hasn't been through customs. These days that can take weeks still. So, but as soon as we hear that has occurred, we will definitely let people know, because I can tell you I am chomping at the bit just as hard as anybody else. So thank you for your patience as we kind of wait this one out. We also had released the soundtrack for backers who had backed at the all-in or higher. The soundtrack album for the Night Cage is now out. It's like 50 minutes of music that goes along with the gameplay. It's amazing. Chris and Massive Music did a great job. Elijah and Tom over there. So thank you for that. Board Game Shot is here too. Hey, how's it going? In any case, we're going to be getting into kind of a making of. As I'm talking about our next Kickstarter project, which is, of course, The Spill. For those who have not seen any news about this, it's a cooperative game where there's an oil rig that has sprung a leak in the middle of the ocean, and you are racing to actually avert disaster. Just containing the oil and that sort of thing. It's a really exciting, very interesting game. And of course, like any game bound for Kickstarter at this point, there's always a video that introduces the concept of the game in kind of a cinematic way, as well as just a brief overview, which is usually kind of, you typically create a 3D environment of the game digitally or sometimes physically, and then kind of lead people through like not the rules, but the broad strokes of what the game is about and how it plays. So part and parcel of that is to actually start somewhere. Honestly, a lot of that is starting with a script. So in a moment, I'm going to switch over my screens here so you can get a peek at that. I just want to take a look. Oh, it looks like Colin's got a comment here. I listened to the soundtrack just around the house. I felt like I was in a horror movie. Well, then it's doing a good job. Yeah, the themes that they had worked up together. They wanted to really think about all the events in the Night Cage. As you progress through the game, and the tension ramps up, and suddenly you're starting to see like the wax eater monsters appear. All those things are kind of timed to where they generally occur in the game, but not so sharply that it happens to happen at one time. It's like kind of fed and woven through a number, like an area of time where it's likely to happen, which I thought was a really brilliant way of doing that. But it is kind of mapped to gameplay, which is pretty neat. All right, well, let me get my let me get my screen oriented here. So the first thing is that when you're doing one of these, obviously you have to start somewhere. You got to start with a script. And so let me just pull this up. I think this will work. There we go. Okay. So, not surprisingly, if there's sound effects, you want to note those, and, you're going to have characters or a narrator's voice, and you're just kind of generally just kind of writing what you want the voice to say or the voice says to say. And that's a pretty straightforward concept. I think everyone generally understands, script writing. But some people, may not be as aware of what happens to it next when you actually get to a storyboard or a more of a shooting script, as it's mentioned or said. So here, let's just get to the front page of this here. So this is an example of that. Let me see if I can get this a little bit bigger. There we go. So here you've got, video spelled out. What is it that you hope to see? And then the audio is listed over on this side. And it's time to kind of coincide. So, so it says, we're going to cut from black to a long shot of an oil rig. And as we push in, get a little bit closer, it's the same shot, but now red hued and slightly angled in frame. And we hear klaxon sounds. We cut to a closer shot of the same timed klaxon beats. Now we hear a Coast Guard coming on the radio. And so as you can see, it kind of progresses. And over here, I've actually inserted little thumbnails of pieces of art that I have prepared for purposes of the video. The interesting challenge with this is that for board games, you might have really, really limited amounts of images you can use for a video. How do you get the most out of what you have? And that's, I think, one of the interesting challenges about making some of these videos. Now, if you're Magic the Gathering and you've got art on every single card, obviously it's going to be a lot easier. But in some board games, the art is, it feels appropriate to the game, but it's not an overwhelming amount. That's kind of the case with the spill. So before I'm actually going to go and I'm going to do a dramatic reading of this script with visuals in a minute. But first, I really want to kind of start with just like the art assets that we're kind of like starting with. I got some other comments here. Board game shot, huge brief. Well, so it's not even a brief. This is the actual script. Yeah, I kind of thought things very, very through. I actually have a filmmaking background, so I typically don't provide just a brief. I typically have a shooting script and have usually thought out most of the frames, but give the creators plenty of latitude to go and do things better than I would. It's just I have usually some sort of a vision going in. George asked, do you often have to create original art for the videos you make? Very often, there will be games that do that. To date, I have not. To date, I've tried to utilize the existing resources that I have and find interesting and innovative ways to have those assets work hard to actually tell the story I want to tell. And that can usually, it takes a little creative oomph in some cases. So let me just show you some of these assets. So for this game, we had a number of things created. And let me actually just pop this up a little bit bigger for everybody. There we go. All right. So as you can see, we've got a game board that is right here. And it has kind of some different regions. There's kind of the shoreline. There's a sky. There's this underwater scene. And of course, there's this kind of almost like a living creature here. The guide board had more oil an ocean background and this really lovely, almost reef scene here. Of course, there are characters in the game, and so the character art for those 5 different characters has also been done for the game. Now, obviously, all of those characters are they're painted in one still frame, so they're a little bit harder to animate, but there are some tools that help us do that. Of course, the biggest piece of art that we have is here. This is the cover art, and the cover art, as I think I showed you last time, the background can be separated out from this core central image, but that's basically it. That's all the art that this game actually created for the board game itself. It doesn't seem like much, does it? So how then do you go ahead and create more? Oh, and Board Game Shop, thank you so much. Yeah, I absolutely love the cover art too. And I should mention here that all this artwork was done by Kwanchai Moria, who is a very famous illustrator here in the board game industry, has done a lot of amazing work. Tenari, Pret-a-Porter, there's just been 7 Summits, a whole bunch of really wonderful games have been done by him. Now, here's an example of something that didn't exist in an actual rendering previous to me coming in and messing around a little bit. This is a piece that I'm using in the video. It's also going to be, I think, one of the spines on the box. But this was created making from multiple pieces layered over top. So, for example, this is a piece of the game board that we just saw. It's that underwater scene that I highlighted. Now I've added to that oil kind of coming in, and then I've added the octopus from the cover and one of the dolphins from higher up in the cover, as well as some fish, and even more dolphins coming in from below. That's what actually created this composition. It's all his amazing artwork just kind of reformatted, but it's those same kind of layers of things that we're going to use in the video to add a little action. You're able to actually manipulate some of these objects and give them just a little bit of life. That it's kind of like an animatic. It's not a full animation, but it gives you a sense of real motion and a sense of drama. And that's, of course, what we're really, really going for. So let's see. Any other stuff going on up here? Let me drop this screen down here. Tanner says the cover is absolutely gorgeous. Colin, gorgeous octopus use. Yeah, thank you, guys. And it's really, the credit really goes to Kwanchai, but it's fun to play with all the pieces and see what more can be done with them. So, all right. So, without further ado, let me go ahead and get ready to do my dramatic reading. I'm going to have to adjust my screens here for a second. Take a little sip. Oh boy. Okay. So let's see. I need to I'm going to stop sharing here for a moment. And then let's reshare that screen. But now as a whole window. Okay. There we are. Okay, and bring this over so I can read dramatically from it as I progress. I know it takes a little coordination. I'm sorry, everybody. I'll reduce the script a little bit so I can see it all in one shot. Okay. We are ready. So let me get to our first shot of the video. Now, as you remember from the storyboard that we just saw, it starts with this long shot of the oil rig out in the middle of the water. And there's going to be the sound of ocean noises, little surf, and of course we'll have gulls, flying over above. So then all of a sudden, uh, 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 Deep Well 4, say again, what is the nature of your emergency? Over. Reporting a major spill incident in progress. The wellhead has ruptured below the surface. We have an uncontrolled release of crude oil from the seafloor. This is a priority 1 emergency. Repeat, priority 1 spill. That was 6 hours ago. Ladies and gentlemen, this response team has been assembled to avert an ecological disaster, one which threatens to contaminate the marine life and devastate the ecosystem. The situation is dire and escalating by the minute. There is no time to waste. Contain the flow. Remove what oil you can from the waters. Save the sea life. The world is watching. The fate of the coast is in your hands. Let's go to work. So now the narrator will kick in. The Spill is an intense cooperative strategy game for 1 to 4 players. Featuring a 4-way dice tower, which spills more oil dice onto the board every turn, the game presents a suspenseful reverse tower defense challenge. Dice will fall into 1 of 4 quadrants. The roll value determines the sector the oil will fill, spreading oil in unpredictable ways. Players are trained specialists who must move to emerging threats as they occur. Contain oil by pushing dice back into the bag, or remove it from the water completely. Rescue marine life and save contaminated animals. Blue weather dice will cause complications, while communal resource cards selected by the team will help you in critical moments. Contamination of too many marine animals or the accumulation of an overwhelming amount of oil will end the game in a devastating loss, unless you can complete all 3 mission goals to win the game first. It's edge of your seat excitement right to the last drop as we slow motion see these dice falling down the tower. Contain the oil, save the sea life. The Spill. Okay, and then it goes black. So there we go. That was kind of the dramatic read-through of what will be eventually the video for this Kickstarter. Now, eventually, I will have a lot of professional help to take it from this very rough concept stage to a really finished professional video. That is not a skill that I have. That's something I have to lean on others to help me with. And of course, they've got some really great video tools that are able to lend life to still images. It's a pretty cool technology. I don't even myself fully understand it, but it's if you've seen in other videos of this kind, you'll see a still image that will be like a little silhouette, but then somehow someone lifts their head. Or just moves something in frame a little bit, and that's done by just kind of cutting and repositioning, or maybe even warping some of the pieces as layers. It's fascinating. It's usually very subtle but very effective, and it definitely gives you the feeling like full animation is happening. And of course, at the back end, where we're actually looking at 3D images of the playing surface, those really are digitally animated. Usually that's a 3D environment that is created, and then they can animate things flying in and cards flipping and all of that stuff. So that's typically a real digital animation. So it got let's see, Tanner, thank you very much. Clapping and roaring applause. Well, I'll wait for my Emmy limit later when it's all done. George, thank you so much. Great use of 2D images and the TTS screenshots to flesh out the script like that. Yeah. And yes, I think something like this can really help someone who is working on one of these projects, at least at the very minimum, understand where my vision as the game game publisher is at. Now, there may be better ways to do all of these, and I also, there's a lot of creativity that go into these videos, and quite often they're going to be things that I never thought of that will be really interesting and exciting builds that someone else may bring to the project. But yeah, I feel like to provide at least this kind of a framework for these creators is pretty important. I think it saves a lot of time. It gets us all kind of marching down towards a similar goal, and allows, of course, them to, I'd say, quote the workload appropriately. And Yeah, it's also really helpful for me. I'm a creative guy. These games are cinematic in my head when I'm playing them. One of the things that really attracts me to games, especially the ones I produce, is that there's a narrative thread. There's a lot of drama. It's a lot like sitting down playing a game. In my head, I'm like in the movie. The pieces go away. I'm actually doing the things that the game says I'm doing, and I can play those scenes out in my head. And so I think it's important, especially in a Kickstarter, when you're trying to create excitement, to instill that vision in people. And videos like this do that so wonderfully. Brad's got a question. What are your thoughts on how important is a well-done video to the success of a Kickstarter? Good question. I think it is critical. Honestly, people in the end will get right down to the rules. They'll understand those mechanics and whether it feels like a game for them. But the power of a moving image, the power of story, to sweep someone up, to get them excited, to get their imagination going on what this game really could be like, and creating that sense of I want to jump in and play this game now. Yeah, I think they're absolutely critical. These are not things that we really did before Kickstarter, and it's interesting because it's not that we didn't put marketing dollars into our projects. It's just that we didn't really have a great venue to show them. And now I think it's an integral part of any Kickstarter, is making sure that initial video, that teaser, is compelling and interesting and beautiful. And of course, now it's not just on the back end of the Kickstarter page. It's also something you're going to use, to promote broadly, in YouTube, and Facebook posts and everything else. So yeah, I think that it's really critical. All right, Tanner says the importance of a well-explained and put-together video can't be overstated. So he agrees, yeah. It could be the most well-designed game of all time, but if it isn't pitched well, people have a hard time connecting with it at face value. Yeah. Well, certainly in the Kickstarter world, absolutely. I mean, it's not like there isn't still room for a great game to be a great game, and it gets, released direct to shelf at retailers, and you pick up the box and it's got great cover art, and you flip over it and it sounds amazing on the back. But you're right. The pitch is the cover and the writing on the back of the box. And just as much effort goes into those things as the video itself. So whether it's a sell sheet, whether it is an ad campaign that you're doing, all of that is geared to do the exact same thing. And now that a video format is so important, especially in the world of Kickstarter, it just makes sense to have that same drive that you want to create something that people have to have, and this really helps instill that feeling. You got to bring people into your world. Yeah, quite right, Tanner, and especially when the game has a rich world that you're experiencing. Maybe a little different in like an abstract game like Shobu. Though you could certainly do a good video there too. But here, I think when you're creating a thematic world, you want people to really be ingrained and immersed in that world. So anyway, I thought you had. I thought maybe this would be kind of interesting for people. I'm glad we did it. Hopefully, it gave you some insights into how these things are made and what goes into it. I think one of the most amazing things. Back to honestly, I'm going to go back to this thing. I think it's just stunning that really with what were a handful of images, right? These images were responsible basically for everything that we saw, other than what will be the 3D environment. Um, you can get really inventive. It's um, when you have limited resources, you really scratch your head and start thinking about what can be done. You start writing towards it. So hopefully this was helpful and entertaining. I had a good time. And yeah, thanks, Tanner. I absolutely thank you for. He says thanks for sharing this process with us, and can't wait to try the game out. Well, that was the whole point. And yeah, and so until next time, I hope you have a great week. Remember to head like and subscribe on whatever format you're watching us through. And yeah, we do this every Tuesday at 4:30. So I'm not sure what the next show will be exactly, but it'll be hopefully equally as entertaining. So anyway, till then, have a great week, all. Thanks for watching.